There's not a day that goes by where there's not some challenge or some unexpected thing, right?
Welcome back to another installment of the Next Gen Case Study Series. Today on the show, we have Jeff Borello, who is the co-owner and chief executive officer of Andromeda Technology, a company that provides comprehensive IT solutions and services to different businesses. With a strong background in technology and business management, Jeff has been pivotal in leading Andromeda Technology towards integrating AI tools to enhance their service offerings and improve customer satisfaction, which is why we're excited to have him on the show. Jeff, welcome to the program.
Devin, thanks for having me. You make me sound a lot more impressive than I think I am now. So that was a good intro. Appreciate that.
Thanks. Yeah, the research helps when we're trying to put things together here. Being that you've been in the game for as long as you have, I'd love to kind of start with a bit of a background on, who you are, where you came from, and how you landed as the CEO of Andromeda Technology.
Yeah. So, and I'll try not to bore you with all the details, but my story starts all the way back in seventh grade when a friend of the family gave me a Radio Shack TRS-80 computer, which I didn't know what it was or what I was going to do with it. But that started me on my journey of learning how to program, self-taught. Went to school to be a software engineer. Worked right out of college at a high-tech data acquisition company right in my hometown, in a little town of Lockport, Illinois. Had no business having this high-tech company, but worked there doing developing software, doing tech support and that kind of thing. And we worked hard there. It was a very hard-working bunch. And a couple of us said, "Man, if we're going to work this hard, we should do this ourselves." And one of the things we knew how to do there was we maintained their network. So we said, we'll go help businesses maintain their networks. And that was 30 years ago, coming up here in October, and it's been just a great journey ever since.
So being, I guess, that you were kind of co-owner here, part founder in terms of just building the business from the ground up, I imagine you have had many roles in the company, part of that including your initial stages of customer acquisition, and I'm sure it has evolved over time. I wonder if you can maybe explore what that evolution looked like.
Yeah, so we started, we did it the old-fashioned way, or what I like to call the old-fashioned way was we just, we didn't take on a bunch of capital. We did this real slow, right? So we did it nights and weekends and a little stealthy here and there. And then pretty soon I went part-time and did Andromeda half-time and my other job half-time. And then eventually I came full-time and then everyone else did the same thing, right? So yeah, those early days, I mean, it was, we started with nothing, right? Our first customer we got from hanging up single page flyers at the local Best Buy, which they were not too happy about. But Trailer Park Bill, we called him. His name was Bill, and he lived in a trailer park. And we helped him migrate from one desktop to another, and that was what started it. But yeah, when you started, it was how do we find customers? And we were really had no clue what we were doing. We had written a business plan where we thought 80% of our business would come from homes. And other than Trailer Park Bill, I don't think we've ever taken another dime from a home. Um, so yeah, and we talk about this a lot over the years. When you're starting out, you're doing the marketing, you're doing the sales, we were doing the technical, and then you'd come home at night at 8 o'clock at night and figure out how to invoice people. So it was really just a very bootstrapped from day one, all the way up to now there's at some point there's close to 50 people working here, and you get hire people to do specialty stuff, and I've now migrated away from the tech to really just running the business. So it's really run that whole course all 30 years through every aspect of the business, which is really that's one of the things I love about it is just the different aspects of it that you get to touch here and there. So it's been a really fun journey.
So how did some of that earlier stuff kind of influence the way you're running things now? Because I know that initially when you're bootstrapping, you're a scrappy little company trying to take on whatever work you can. But over time you evolve and you kind of hone in on what works, where it works, who it works for. How did that early stuff kind of shape the things that you're up to now?
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head, right? In that early days, you just take anything and whatever brings a dime in the door. Which turns out, that's been our mode for a lot of years, and you got to be careful with that because it gets ingrained in you and it's hard to shake.
Mm.
So we've spent probably the last 3 or 5 years really trying to better hone in a more narrow offering. Paying more attention to the bottom line than the top line, and just spend a lot of time trying to find the right customers, people that share our culture, um, finding people that really want to invest in technology. Because one of the struggles we have sometimes is people don't want to spend the money that they need to spend, and then we just end up fighting the same fire over and over again for them. So that really has been a learning curve for us in the last probably probably over 5 years, just trying to get that nailed in to find the right customers, get some of the wrong ones out, and then try not to bring any more of the wrong ones in. And it's definitely a challenge, especially when you have salespeople, right? Salespeople want to go, they just want to bring the dollars in the door, and it's hard. It's hard sometimes to turn that away. So definitely something we've learned and worked on over many years.
And okay, so Jeff, as you kind of refine some of this stuff, out of the plethora of revenue models that exist out of there, have you guys honed in on one or two that kind of serve you in terms of maybe like a recurring revenue model or one-off type things, maybe subscriptions? Where are you at in terms of developing that?
Yeah, so we are primarily at this point a MRR based company, right? So we sell managed services agreements to our customers. And now, along with that, there are projects that need to be done, but primarily, like, rarely will we do a project for someone that does not have an agreement with us. So we are very much focused on that recurring revenue, managing people's environments so we're not fighting the fire so much.
Mm.
And then the other adjustment we've made in the last few years is we're really trying to focus on a single industry of manufacturing. So we're spending a lot of time, um, you know, understanding the manufacturing space and what their unique needs are. So that's been an additional focus of ours over the last couple of years as well.
So just so I guess we all have kind of a better understanding of like the stage that your company currently is at. What size is your team? What's your kind of revenue projections? Like where are you at in terms of growth?
Yeah. So we're approaching, the next couple of years we'll hit 10 million in revenue. And we fluctuate depending on what's going on, anywhere in between 40 and 50 people. Um, One of the things we had done over the years was we had acquired some other businesses that were tangentially related, I'll say, to IT. So we
Okay.
got into the business telephone system business back in the day when people were still selling on-prem phone systems.
Right.
We were doing physical security with security cameras, door access control, and burglar alarm for a while. And even for a few years there, we were doing websites. And what we've done over the last 4 years is basically spin all those out. The last one actually we sold off earlier this year to one of our technicians. We basically essentially turned the business over to him and letting him learn to be an entrepreneur, so that we got back to our roots of being an IT company and only an IT company. We got pretty wide there for a while, which again was good for the top line, but not necessarily good for the bottom line. And we just weren't big enough, and it was causing just a lack of focus with our leadership team. And so that's been in our marketing. So that's been a really good change this year in 2024, is really getting back to our roots and really going back deep on IT.
So making that decision to go deeper or taller, however you kind of look at this, rather than wider or more horizontal, when it comes to the approach of customer acquisition and marketing, has that helped or hindered your processes in the way of gaining traction?
So it has helped, and it will continue to help, I believe, in the long term. Now there was, you get some when you're wide, you get a little bit of synergy across some of the businesses. But what we found was, that again, you go back to the business model, right?
Mhm.
We're in the IT space for us was very recurring revenue, whereas the building security was very project based, and there was just always this constant fight, if you will. Even our marketing was really hard to describe our marketing because we looked like some people would say, yeah, you look like the Walmart of technology here. Um, so it like and I happen to be the guy heading up marketing, but it's really helped us hone our message into not try to be serving three masters, and really to be able to get one unified message that says what we do. So I did, and again, that's still a little bit of work in progress this year, but it's definitely helped our messaging and our understanding and our leadership team. Now we have one North Star that we know we're pointing towards. Before maybe we had two or three, so it's really helped focus us internally.
Well, that's actually really helpful is to find that one the one big mission or the one big domino or the one big thing that you kind of have your company aiming at. From that lens, I wonder, Jeff, if you could kind of walk us through what that customer experience map looks like from that point of discovery where they find you and they want to maybe, or they're curious and they want to work with you. How do you onboard them? Like, what does that whole experience look like?
Yeah. So one of the things we do, I think, a little differently is we probably dig a little deeper up front because, again, we're looking for the right customers.
Mhm.
So one of the things, we send an engineer out at some point during the sales process to really just make sure, are they going to be a good fit? What are their problem points going to be, and are we going to be able to help them? So we spend a little bit more time up front trying to understand what the customers, because there's some similarities. Where it says, every customer in the manufacturing space, 70% of it's the same, and then 30% of it's unique to them. So it's really understanding what's going to be special about that 30%. So we spend a fair amount of time doing that. And then one of the things we find is, the biggest reason companies settle for mediocre IT is because they're afraid of the change, right? And what we find is a lot of places the IT is causing chaos in their business, right? Whether there's downtime or people just having the same old problems, and because they have some mediocre IT support from their managed service provider, it just causing a lot of chaos in the business. But it's the devil you know is better than the devil you don't know.
Right.
So one of the things we do is when you do sign with us, we pretty much take on 95% of that onboarding process from the customer. The customer, there's very little lift they need to do. They put us in touch with their existing provider. We work with them. Yeah, there's a little bit of, turmoil here and there anytime you change something, but it's usually a lot less than most people think. And by the time we get done with that, sometimes it's 30 days, sometimes it's 60 days, just depends on how complicated their arrangement is. But the very consistent message we hear from the client is, wow, I can't believe I waited this long to make this change. So, and then at that point, once we get them through the onboarding phase, then we turn them over and it becomes a little bit more of the day to day. And that first 90 days is trying to get them to a stable spot because what we find a lot of times is they just didn't have a very stable IT environment. So you got to get them stabilized and then try to understand, okay, here's the next things you need to do this year, right? And we try to work with them on their budget, work with them on the things, they may have some things that are really high priority critical that need to get done from a security standpoint. And then there's some other things that maybe could, take 6 months to get implemented. So it's really sitting down with them, digging in, understanding what that landscape looks like, and then working with them to figure out when we can work together to get it figured out. So that's, pretty much from the time they start looking, probably a couple months, they're doing some research, sales cycles, 30 to 60 days. And then there's that 30-day onboarding and then another 90 days to really get them to a good spot where now they're just one of the bunch that we're taking care of and making happy.
So it sounds like a lot of people come to you with their house on fire, and and you and your team work really diligently to help kind of obviously get the big problems out of the way taken care of, and then slowly kind of rebuild that infrastructure so that they have a more stable foundation for the business to operate on.
Yeah, I think they fall into a couple camps. There's the house on fire people that just usually a lot of times they've had a security incident of some kind that shouldn't have happened, right?
Right.
So there's that half, and then there's the other half that it's not quite the house is on fire, but it's just they know that there's something better out there. Either, again, usually see we have problems and it takes too long to get them resolved, right? Or the current MSP is not responsive enough.
Mm.
A lot of times the current managed service provider does not communicate well, right? IT companies are known for bad communication. That's one of the things we really focus on is communication. We spend a lot of time on communication. And then there's just the same problems all over and over again. And our wireless out in the warehouse just doesn't work right. Um, and again, so the problem we find a lot of times is, again, it's not the house is on fire. They know there's something better, but when it gets time to pull the trigger, they just get a little hesitant, like, well, I don't know. I'm afraid it's not going to be any better. And I just wish everybody would understand how much better it could be when they get on board with us. So that's our challenge to try to really get that message across that, yeah, even though your house isn't on fire, it's causing a lot more efficiency problems, productivity problems, and money lost probably than they think.
I call this the hammer problem, Jeff. And the analogy that I like to use is to hammer every problem looks like a nail. But here's the thing, you could be hammering in bolts. And don't get me wrong, it's possible. You take a flat bolt and you put it on a piece of wood and you bang on it enough times, you're gonna make a hole. But is that necessarily the best or most efficient way to get there? And so you have to create these opportunities for ways for you to creatively communicate to people that, hey, listen, you are hammering a bolt and we have a drill that'll put that bolt in much more effectively, and here's how you're going to benefit from it. So bearing in mind then that you've kind of, I'll say, reined things in and pushed it into this space now where you can go a little bit more vertical, or verticalization of the business. What sorts of growth opportunities have kind of unlocked as a result of you exploring that as part of your business development?
Yeah, I think it's so, when a manufacturer talks to us and they understand that, wow, we are focused on one industry and one industry only. and we understand their plight, right? One of
Mhm.
the major issues we see in the manufacturing space is they rely a lot on wireless, and generally most IT companies don't do wireless well. So that's one of our claims to fame, if you will, is our engineering team really understands wireless. We understand the nuances that affect it, and we understand how to effectively configure, engineer, and sell them the right solution.
Mhm.
Um, so that's one of the areas because we've specialized in that. We know that that is one of the problem areas, and it's one of the places we've spent a big investment, and we have a really good partner in Ruckus Networks that is a very, they specialize in networking and specifically wireless. And they've been a really good partner, and we can bring them in for really complicated setups. And so that's one of the examples of where the verticalization has really helped us help the manufacturing space.
So when you're exploring some of these new opportunities, given that it's kind of new territory and you may or may not be flying blind or at least partially visually impaired into some of these challenges, how do you determine what's working, what's not working? What sorts of metrics do you use to measure your success as you explore some of these ideas?
Yeah, so a lot of it is feedback from the clients, right? And we get that in various ways. Every service ticket that closes, whoever the ticket was for on the end user side gets a survey, right? Did we get the problem taken care of? Um, and then we do, at the end of each project we have a project survey that we ask the clients to fill out. What was the initial problem? How was our communication? How are the timelines? And ultimately, did we make the problem better? And then just a quarterly or semi-annual survey that we put out to the clients that's really more about just the holistic view of the company. How are we doing overall? And, each quarter we generally have some sort of initiative going. Like, last quarter we had some problems where our people calling in were getting in our phone queue and they were being queued up too long. So we made some changes to that. So we will ask on the next quarterly survey, did we make this better? So it's really just that constant feedback from the clients. And a lot of that starts with, okay, here's the problem you presented with us. Here's the solution we put in place. 90 days better, 90 days later, did we make it better, make it go away? So it's just a lot of feedback from the customers. Metric wise, we watch a lot of metrics around just customer satisfaction, time to resolution, that kind of thing. But that's not necessarily vertical specific. It's really just across the whole organization. So um, it's a combination of those for the most part.
And you mentioned earlier too that you part of the growth that has helped you or sorry, part of the work that you've done that has helped your growth become exponential was the acquisition of other business units. Um, what I'm curious about is your openness or willingness for collaboration when it comes to that sort of thing. Do you actively seek out these things because it's a current challenge that you're facing and you need to solve it on a larger scale, or is this kind of just out of necessity because of the natural evolution of the business?
Um, I'm not 100% sure I understood what you were asking there. So I'm just going to, you were talking about the acquisitions, but then I wasn't sure I was following you.
Right. So in terms of making a decision about that acquisition, is that out of necessity because that's just the trajectory of the business, or are you actively looking for collaborations with other parties to augment or supplement the current business operations?
Yeah. So generally, probably two answers, two pieces of that answer. One is the acquisitions that we've done have always been out of not necessity as much as something we wanted to grow into. So, we've made three acquisitions in our time, and they were always to bring in a different um, business unit, so to speak. Um, so those were more about growth opportunities versus necessity. Typically, if we have something that we need, so we definitely are partnership oriented, right? We will bring in vendors as partners. We will bring in strategic partners for areas of the business that we don't do. But typically, if it's going to be something that's core of our business, it's going to be something we keep in house almost 95% of the time. Um, but then as you get into very specialized things, so for example, we do IT support, we will spin up a basic SharePoint site for a customer. But if they need a whole SharePoint site developed, we have partners for that. So that's again one of the things we're trying to do is to not get too wide again, is if it is out of our expertise, we will bring in partners for that to help. And most of the time, again, depending on what it is, if it's part of a project, we'll keep the project so that we don't want the customer to have to talk to three different companies. But if it's something that's completely out of our scope, we'll just introduce them to the partner and let them and the partner have a relationship. So it just depends on kind of what it is as to which tool we grab.
Right. So a lot of it seems intentional because that's the direction you're headed in. Sometimes, occasionally, there is a supplemental unit that might be a part of it. But yeah, that makes sense. So, uh, Jeff, as we kind of come to a close with our time together here, I wonder if we can look a little bit forward into the future at maybe some of the goals that you're aiming at, and some of the strategies that you're deploying to kind of help get you there.
Yeah. So, part of it is the whole world's talking about AI and automation, and that is absolutely going to have an impact on our business. But one of the things we believe, and we believe this very strongly, is we're in a people business, right? So yeah, there are some low level recurring type of things that we do that we will automate for sure. But we never want to take the human element out of that. One of the things that happens here is if you call our office, whether that's our main number or you're calling into our help desk, a human being answers the phone, right? We don't have an automated attendant. We want people to be able to talk to someone. Sometimes the house is on fire and we need someone now, right? So there's certain aspects that we just don't want to automate. I think the AI thing is definitely going to be a big lever in the future, but I just don't think it's there right now. Everyone's talking about it, and there's some cool things it brings to the table, but to just start turning over pieces of your business to it, it's just generally not ready for that yet. But obviously that's something we will definitely keep an eye on, and we will be developing in that direction. The other big thing for us is just becoming a much more process-oriented company. One of the things we've undertaken in the last year is to become NIST 800-171 compliant, because there's a lot of pieces of that control how we run the business from a security standpoint. So that's a big deal from us. And just really making sure that we have process in place to make sure that we're doing things consistently. And it's really all about that client experience. So again, a big push for us over the next year or two is just, what do we need to do? We consider ourselves good to great now as far as a client experience. We want it to be just excellent. We want the clients to have a great experience. We want their problems to go away. And so it's really putting a lot of emphasis on, getting from great to excellent, whatever that's a long journey, but it's a big endeavor, but we think it's an important endeavor.
Yeah, I'm very present to the 80/20 rule. The first 80% of it it's much easier to get there, but that last 20% to refine it is a tremendous amount of work. So it's exciting that you guys are taking that on, and I hope for the best for that. As we kind of wrap the conversation up here, Jeff, final words. I wonder if you could maybe share some advice for somebody else who's kind of out there up to it, trying to make something big for themselves. What could you offer them to kind of help keep them on the right path?
Don't give up. There's not a day that goes by where there's not some challenge or some unexpected thing, right? So I think that's the resilience. One of our core values is grit, right? If you're, especially in this business, but really almost any business, if you can't weather through those bad days, you're just not going to make it, right? Because there's always going to be bad days. And it is a never ending fight to turn the bad into good and just to always say, you know, great, we did these 9 things. Great. This other thing didn't go well. Fine. We got to hunker down and make that better. And it's not, for us, we're tough on ourselves, right? But we always have to remind ourselves we're not chasing perfection, we're chasing progress. And you just stay at it, stay at it, stay at it, and don't give up.
That last line there, that's a banger. That's definitely something that everybody should understand is that we're not trying to make this absolutely 100% perfect, but what we are looking to do is continue to progress forward in a way that does, at least to some degree resemble growth. So that's yeah, love that. If somebody wanted to reach out to you to pick your brain further or perhaps work with you, Jeff, what's the best way for them to do that?
Email's always great. My email's Jeff B, so JEFFB at We Network, so WENETWORK.com. Website, you can actually get there from the WeNetwork.com, but our website really is Andromeda-Tech-Solutions.com. We get a lot of questions on that. Well, why is your email different than, because, Andromeda, turns out nobody can really spell Andromeda. So way back in the day, we simplified it up to We Network. But yeah, and yeah, I'm always available to talk. I love talking business. I love talking tech, and certainly anybody that is on a new journey and wants to talk business, I would love to help. That's one of our core purpose at the company is helping people succeed. So anything we can do to help someone, we're all about that.
Well, this entire conversation is definitely going to tip people in the right direction one way or another. We'll make sure to link to all your contact in the show notes there, for anybody that's listening and watching and who does want to get in touch with you. And on that note, if you wanted to reach out to me and my team for any of your marketing needs, you can visit nextgengrowth.com. Otherwise, that's it for this conversation. Thanks for joining us, and I will see you in the next.